popular. And that's, there's never been a better opportunity to restore America than now. We are gaining more votes than ever before for our message, building our base, securing delegate spots, key to winning the nomination and introducing the party and influencing the party for years to come. No score in 7 years ago. I too walk these hallways. I too study sometimes. And I too yearn for the message of liberty to come to U of I. Today, I'm especially pleased to come back to campus with the champion of the Constitution and the next President of the United States.
He has 9 children and 11 grandchildren. Prior to serving in Congress, Congressman Johnson was an Urbana lawyer, a small businessman, a realtor, and served on the Urbana City Council and the Illinois State Legislature. He is a proponent of small government, fighting against taxes, and reducing the national debt. Please join me in a warm welcome for Congressman Tim Johnson.
conducted an incredible campaign to survive the long battle from Iowa to Illinois. Ironically, if you look at the polls, the latest Rasmussen poll, Ron Paul is beating President Obama 43 to 41. Try to frame our opinions and determine who's going to win or lose the primacy there. No, I don't think so. He has an across-the-board appeal to liberals, conservatives, independents, ordinary Americans who simply want government to leave them free to pursue their dreams. He defies the worldwide opinion makers who say he can't win because he can. And the greatest tribute to this gentleman is the fact that we have, before spring break, we have thousands of people, the biggest turnout of the campaign, bigger than any other campaign anywhere, including any of the contenders, here in one place to pay tribute to this great man. So thank you. Should not and cannot spend our money, usurp our freedom, and kill or maim our people in a useless venture that themselves to no positive gain. It can't involuntarily direct our lives or other proclaim greater good. So this gentleman is the hope for America that is debt-free, peace-driven, humane, and good, and driven by the golden arm of the United States Constitution and the principles of our founding fathers of God. In conclusion, he has chosen our community. We are eternally grateful to Dr. Paul to bring your campaign to Illinois. He's given his full time and energy to a campaign for tomorrow. He is our last and best hope for Americans out. The government does have a responsibility. It should be very limited, though. The founders were very unhappy with the king, and they had a little revolution, wrote a little document called the Constitution. And at that time, they worried a bit, believing if the people didn't maintain a real effort to protect those liberties, the Constitution would protect them. I think what has happened in the last 100 years, there's been a disintegration of the enthusiasm for personal liberty. It has to be renewed, has to be restored, and we're at right now. The document, the Constitution dealt with all areas. The government was there to protect our liberties. It was there to provide a sound currency. Believe that? Also, the Constitution was very explicit on when we should go to war, and it would only be done with a declaration. How was that? The wars should be fought only under declaration. They were sick and tired of the king deciding when to go to war, sending the bills to the people. Well, guess what? We're back at square one. The king, our executive branch, is deciding
some things.
You don't have the right to go to your neighbor through your congressman to get your personal bailout. You have to suffer the consequences of what you do. What we really carry today is that you would be rewarded according to your willingness to work hard. You have a right to your life. We haven't dispelled Jefferson on that. We have a right to liberty. I don't know why it is that we don't have a right to keep all interventionism and socialism and welfare